Welcome back to video 3. In this video we are having a look at formatting. So we're going to have a look at conditional formatting and also the formatting of data. So let's just jump straight into this. So to get to conditional formatting, we come up to Home and we come across over here to conditional formatting. Now, what is conditional formatting? Well, conditional formatting is basically a way that we can have a look at data and represent it by colors or symbols just to make it a bit clearer, particularly when you're working with a lot of data. You want to use conditional formatting to be able to assess things very, very quickly. So I've gone ahead and taken this maths data sheet that we used in our last lesson, and I've just fleshed it out a little bit more, added a couple of extra kids with a few extra marks, and this column here we'll use a little bit later. I might just quickly drag that out, and before I start, I should have made a copy here of these. There we go. And let's jump straight into using conditional formatting. So I want to color code this addition column here to be able to have a look at exactly how my class is doing. So I'm going to select my column here and then come up to conditional formatting. Now, there's two major ways of doing conditional formatting here. We'll leave this section here and we'll come down to here and we'll deal with these middle ones first because these are the ones you'll use most of the time. And we'll start with color scale. If I move my mouse over color scale, this side menu pops up and you can see straight away that right there it's color coded from 0 being red through to 9 being green, and it's found this nice gradient all the way in between. And so straight away I can see that there's not that many in green, there's not that many in red, so how's my class doing? Well, it's doing okay. There's quite a lot there around that 3, 4, 5, 6 mark. If I move over to some of these others, it's the same thing, that's just inverted. It's exactly the same thing, but all with just a different color scheme. So these monochrome color schemes, I don't know how useful they would be for capturing data. But I suppose if you want a minimalistic look, you could go with those. But I find that first one quite useful. And in the same way, if we come up to the data bars, you can see as I move over them, it's just representing the data using the data bars. And again, it's a nice clear way of seeing how the kids are going. And you can very, very clearly see where kids are up to without having to look at the numbers. Icon set, same thing as well. It's just showing who's struggling, who's doing really well, who's in the middle there, just with a little color next to it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually click on one of these. And we'll accept that one in. So here you can see that these kids here, it's decided with the formula it's using that they're struggling a bit, they need support. These ones are doing okay, and these ones here are doing fantastically. But here's the thing, you may not agree with that. You may say, but I think that I want the 3 here, these kids here, to also be included in the red dot. Because I think if you're getting 30% or under, well, that should be declared as struggling. So I'm going to go through and select it all, and we're going to have a look at changing this now. Come back to conditional formatting. I'm going to come back to the icon set that we used, but this time I'm going to come down to more rules down the bottom here. I click on more rules, and straight away it's come up saying I'm using the icon set, but here you can see it's asking what percentage am I declaring as green? What percentage am I declaring as the yellow? So I might go through and say, well, the yellow, I don't want it set to 33%, I want it set to 40%. So anything 40% and above will be in yellow. And I want to set this to 80. Now, as well as using percentage, because it depends on what data you're working with, you may just want to work with the raw data itself, you can come along and actually change it here just to number. But I'll leave that percentage and I'll change that to 80%. And when I click OK, you can see it's actually changed it. So now all of these kids here, up to the 3, they're the ones I want to target with support. These ones here are the ones that I'm going to target with extended work. And these ones here are the ones that are traveling okay, and I'm just working with them where they should be. Now, that's really good to get a good overall picture of the class. But sometimes we don't want to have a look at the whole class. We just want to target a specific set of students. Maybe one particular characteristic about a student. So I'm going to select this again, and I'm going to come up to conditional formatting, and that's what the top ones are for here. The top ones are for targeting a specific characteristic. So highlight cell rules, and I'm going to say, do I want to have a look at the kids that are greater than a certain value, less than a certain value, between a certain value, equal to a certain value, and there's a few others here. I'm going to say equal to a certain value here. And I'm going to say I only want to target the students that got a 6. And you can see straight away it's given me a preview, it's highlighted them there, and it's highlighted them in red. Or I can come through and I can choose any formatting I like, or I can go custom format. So I'm going to say I want them in green, and they're a group that I'm going to work with. So that allows me to target a specific set of kids as well as the whole class overview. Now, I'm going to use the subtraction column. I'm going to select all of it. Make sure you do select all the data. Oh, there's no reason to why I can't select across columns as well. So I'm going to select this column here. I'm going to go conditional formatting. And now we've looked at being able to identify, conditionally format data across a whole class, target a specific characteristic. Now what we want to do is we want to have a look at creating our own rule from scratch. Because sometimes just none of those options are good enough. And that's where the new rule comes in. So I'm going to click on new rule, and it brings up this box here, and we just simply work from top to bottom to say what we want our rule to be. Do we want our rule to be based on certain values? Do we want it to be based on the content that's in the cell itself? What about its rank, but comparing it to the other ones? So above or below the average. So that one's a very useful one. We're going to go contain in a cell. This one I find that I use more than any of the others. So here it says we want to look at what's in each of these cells. And now what do we want to actually specifically look at? Is it a number, let's say between 3 and 5 is what we want to look at? Or maybe we want to come and change this. Maybe we want to say that we want to specifically target those people, actually I'll leave it between, that are between 2 and 4. And what do we want it to look like when we've got that selected? Well, I want it to be red, and I want it to be bold, and I want it to have a dotted border. And I'll go OK, and there we go. And you can actually see that it's gone through and it's marked all of those that were 2, 3, and 4 within that range. Now, you can actually stack formatting on top of each other. So if I select this again and I come up and I go conditional formatting, and I'll go a new rule, and I'll go back to contains in a cell, and I want to go this time equal to the number 7. What do I want to do? Well, I'll just fill it this time, and we'll go that peachy color, and there we go. So we're just stacking our own rules on top of each other. Now we come to this column here. And this column is quite different to the others because, as I've said before, in Excel we really only want to have numbers in cells. We don't want to double up with a number and a word. But here I've broken my own rule and we've doubled up with a number and a word here, being 1 star. So how am I going to deal with this? We can still conditionally format with this, but we can't use things like greater than or less than because it doesn't register it as a number. Now it's actually registering everything as just text. It's not the number one, it's actually almost like the letter one is the better way of understanding it for a computer. So I'm going to go conditionally format, and I'm going to come down to new rule, and we're going to go to this format only cells that contain again. And now I'm going to go to, rather than looking at it as a cell value, because it's not a number anymore, it's a text, we want to go to specific text. And now we're saying that this cell contains, what does it contain? It contains 3 star. And this needs to be identical to the way that you formatted it over here as well. If there's no space, that will actually register as something entirely different. And what do we want 3 star to be? Well, 3 star is great. We're going to put it in green. And there we go. And I'm going to go back in and I'm going to put another new rule on top of that. Contains text. And this time I'm going to say not containing. Oh, not containing. And what is it not containing? Well, I'm going to put 3 star again. So now it's going to say if it doesn't contain 3 star, what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to put it in yellow. And there we go. So we've stacked our rules on top of each other and we've got everything formatting there. Now you say, well, I've now made a giant mess. I've got too many rules. I want to simplify it, or I want to delete some of my older ones that I'm just simply not using anymore. How do I go about that? Well, if we click on formatting again, we come down and we've got here clear rules. Clear rules from entire sheet, from specific cells, and we've got manage rules. I'm going to click on manage rules this time. And now what it's doing is it's looking for the rules in the area I've selected, which, well, there aren't any because I haven't selected an area. I'm over here. So I'm going to change this to the entire worksheet. And there are all my rules. And I can say I just want to disable some of these. Or I'm just going to go through and delete all of them. And there we go, and that's gone through and deleted all my rules. So that's working with conditional formatting. Now what we want to do is we want to move one to the left. And we want to have a look at this number formatting here. Because this one we'll use on a regular basis as well. And if we don't understand this one, it can actually become a little bit annoying when we're working with certain data. So I'm going to cross to another table that I've got here. So on another page, and this one I decided that it was a little bit of a project the kids were doing. They had to make their own budget. And so this kid here, he's gone through and he said he's making his income. And his income comes from his pocket money, his lawns, and his eggs. Now, he's selling some eggs off each week. So now we've got here the date that we'll have to fill out, the amount that he's earning, and we've got this other here just so we can play around with it afterwards. So if I come across and have a look here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to delete those, and I'm going to put it in as you would normally type it in. And you'd say, well, I earned $15 getting pocket money. I'll use the $sign again. I earned $20 mowing lawns, and I earned $6.20 on eggs. But I've broken that fundamental rule again. What I've done is I've included a piece of text, which is the $sign, with a number. And so now the whole thing no longer is a number working properly. It is now actually, it's considered as all letters according to the computer. And therefore we can't do any calculations with it. We're actually very limited with what we can do in Excel. So formatting it looks right, but functionality-wise, we're now going to run into a lot of problems. So I'm going to go through and get rid of that $sign. Now we're going to come over to here and have a look. Now, oh, you can actually see it's automatically added them back in because I have set it up properly already, and I'll show you what I did in just a minute. But if you come and have a look over here, any cell that I click on, here it says General. It's saying Excel will try and work out what you're putting in this cell. Is it numbers? So is it going to be currency? Is it going to be a percentage? Is it going to be a fraction? Is it going to be a date? Excel's going to do its best to try and work it out. In a lot of cases, though, it does struggle a little bit. So we can see here that everything's saying general apart from the money here, because I've already come down, clicked here, and set it to accounting. Now I can set it to currency as well. I'll come down here and we can see currency is already built in. And I might say, well, I want it set to pounds, dollars, or euros, or again, we can go through and do more there. So I'm just going to set it all to dollars, and you can see it's grabbed the accounting there. Same with percentage. I'll go the other here. If I go 0.23, oh, it's registered that as a fraction, wanting to be a fraction. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put it back as general, or I can click on percentage and you can see it'll make it 32%. So it's all the different ways we can represent that 0.32, but it's just telling Excel exactly which way we want to represent that. Now, let's say I've got a number and I've got 23.124565. Again, it's trying to grab it as a fraction. And now I can say, but I don't want that really large number. So I can move how many decimal points, how many decimal places I want to show. So I'm going to bring that in, and I only want to show 2 decimal place. There we go. So now, and it'll actually round as well. So if I change that to a 7, and I bring it in, you can see it moved that up to a 3. It rounded it for us. So this is quite powerful. Now, one of the problems you will come across is date. So if I come through here, and you can see it says general, and if I type in a date, so he got his pocket money on the 16th of the 9th, 2018, you can see straight away it's registered it as date, which is exactly what we wanted to. But that's an Australian format. Sometimes you want an American format. Sometimes you might want to have the dashes like that instead of the slash if you just want that formatting style. It's up to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to more formatting here. And here I can now add more. You can see it already says it's a date. And here I can say, well, maybe I want it not as the 3rd, I want it as March. So if I click OK, now it's actually displaying it. You can see the text, the information in the cell is still the same, but what it's displaying is actually different. I might want to come through, and I've got all the different formats here. Or you can say, I want my own format. So I'm going to come up here. Oh, custom, that's what I'm looking for. Custom. And you can see here it's set to day, day, month, month, year, 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 year. Well, I want it set to, we'll swap it out to American formatting. Month, month, but I want a dash instead of the slash. Day, day, year, year. And I only want 2 years. I only want the 18, I don't want the 2000. So, and you can see there's the example of it, and it's actually flipped it around for us. You can also have minutes, seconds, there's a lot here you can play with, whether you want to add in AM, PM as well, and there's a huge amount of other formatting here when it comes to customizing your own formatting. But I'll click OK on that, and there we go, and now that's set it up in the formatting that I wanted. But again, you can see the data is still the same, just the way it's displayed is different. Now, there is a bit of a problem with this. Let's say I come over here and I type in the 3rd of the 10th. Now you'll actually see what it'll do, and it'll make no sense at first. So I want this as the date. So I move down and it's actually grabbed it as the date. But then I say, well, wait a second. I want it now as a fraction, 3/10. And when I do it, it still grabs it as the date. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to choose fraction. Now, don't worry about that because it's just trying to read the 3rd of October as a date. So I'm going to plug it in again. And you can see that it's actually shrunk it down to 2/7. But when you think about it, you can't actually do that. So what's the computer actually done? Well, it's taken the fraction and it's made it a decimal, which is 0.3. However, the fraction for 2/7 is actually 2.8 something. And it's rounded it up to 0.3. And therefore the computer is registering that 3/10 is the same as 2/7 because they're both 0.3. And so you do run into some of these problems. So how do we fix this? Well, if we simply want to override everything and we want to say, I want full control over how it's displayed. We highlight the section we want to have full control over. We come up here and we just simply come down to text. Now, whatever I type is exactly what I will see. So if I type 2/7, it'll remain 2/7. If I type 3/10, it'll remain 3/10. So this text is basically if things just aren't displaying exactly how you want them, you can just simply override it. So that's actually a really important feature to remember. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. So hopefully you've got a good understanding of formatting using conditional formatting and also how to format the data itself. And we'll see you in the next video clip where we're going to be looking at making graphs.